Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomena, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Hi, everyone. This is Patty Conklin with Healing Within. Thank you so much for joining my show. I know you're going to get lots of really good information and lots of tips that you can be using at home about stress, natural disasters, PTSD, trauma. I have an incredible guest with me today, and we go back a long way, but she is fabulous in her field. And I have with me today Dr. Laurie Nadel. And Dr. Nadel is a specialist in acute stress, trauma, and anxiety issues. Her award-winning book, The 5 Gifts, Discovering Hope, Healing, and Strength When Disaster Strikes, with a foreword by Dan Rather, was voted one of the best books of 2018 by the prestigious Library Journal. She's also an author of a 4-time bestseller, Sixth Sense, Unlocking Your Ultimate Mind Power, which was featured on Oprah twice. She's been a guest on Dan Rather's America and Coast to Coast with George Noonan. So I'd like to bring you in, Laurie. Thank you so much for being with me. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. How are you, my friend? It's great to talk to you, and thank you for having me on your show.
I am so thrilled that you're here because, wow, what a world we're living in right now. And lots of natural disasters, lots of man-made disasters. And I think it's just so important for people to understand how to cope. How do we cope? You have done so much, and you've been through so much. I'm going to kind of give a little preamp here of just 9/11 and lead you into that, because while you did not live down near the World Trade Centers, trade towers, you had your office in Manhattan. And so talk to me about that. I know we've got stuff we could go back to, but let's just kind of start with 9/11 moving forward in the different trauma situations that you've personally been involved with and how that helps you as a psychotherapist to help your clients.
Well, thank you for asking about that. September 11th, my office was in the FEMA zone. It was south of 14th Street. It was across the street from what was then a major hospital serving downtown at Ground Zero. And I I was not in the office that day, but the area was sealed off, and when we were able to get back into the office because of there was a disaster zone just north of the office. It was the northern perimeter of the ground zero zone. The office was covered in dust, and the dust was the toxins from the World Trade Center, and of course, I don't like to think about this, but the powder from human debris, people who were vaporized, and we vacuumed and we put in air filters, and I started looking for a new office. But between the time that I found the new office, I had over 150 hours of exposure in an enclosed space, breathing the air, the contaminated air.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later, I developed what is now kind of permanent chronic lung damage because of having inhaled too much of the powder. But most of my clients were living downtown or working downtown. And then after about a year, I started a program for teenagers whose fathers were killed in the World Trade Center, and I ran that with a local hospital for a couple of years. And I am still receiving calls from people and speaking to people who are still affected by 9/11, especially this past anniversary was extremely uncomfortable, was extremely painful for many people, kids whose fathers were killed who are now young adults, as well as first responders. It seemed to have kicked up a lot of flashbacks for people. And unfortunately, we're living in very turbulent times. We're living in very dangerous times. And I think that the importance of developing a spiritual mindset, spiritual values that can help us to cope with these kind of upheavals and adversities has never been more important.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard for people once you go through such a severe trauma, whether it's 9/11, you yourself also experienced Hurricane Sandy with your home and the trauma associated with that. And, the flashbacks that people get. I mean, I'm a firm believer, as most of you know, that our disease begins with emotional cores. And those emotional cores can start building and creating pain and leading to disease. And so as these disasters hit and people don't have a coping mechanism to deal with it, or it's a continuation of traumas, or those triggers of traumas. Talk to us a little bit about Hurricane Sandy, because that wasn't too long ago either.
Well, about 7 years ago, I lived, and I'm back living on Barrier Island, just south of Long Island. It's just southeast of the New York City line. And I had a beach cottage for 20 years, and I had 3.5 to 4 feet of water from the Intracoastal Waterway and the ocean that completely destroyed the house. I was hiding with my boyfriend and my cat. We're up in the attic. And the water came in with such force that the refrigerator was floating and the couch was floating and the washing machine were floating. And it was like being in the movie Titanic.
Wow.
And, and in that moment, I felt extremely calm, and I felt that I was spiritually being kind of lifted up, and I received a message from Spirit that said, as the water is pushing out the walls of your house, we are pushing out the walls around your heart, and wherever you go, you will carry the peace and magic of your home within you now.
Wow.
And, so I was really, it was kind of like a mystical experience for me, as well as a great teaching on what the Buddha calls the message of impermanence.
Right.
Because everything that I'd built in 20 years was wiped away in about 20 minutes.
Wow.
And it was staggering to stand there and see it happen. Now, I'm one of those people who's very calm in an emergency, but it wasn't until several months later that the real pain and horror started to hit because I was busy dealing with FEMA, dealing with insurance companies, fighting for money. I was told that I had to rebuild my home. It was, the whole island, the whole Northeast. There were 1,000 miles of coastline and 1 million people who were affected, and it was really, really debilitating.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I was driving from Buffalo and actually went west to come back down to Georgia during Hurricane Sandy, and even being that far inland, my car was buffeted by just horrific winds, just even attempting to drive that far inland. And I can't imagine what you were going through in all of that experience. And, one of the things that I question is when you hear of a hurricane coming in, and coming up the East Coast or, hitting anywhere in the continental United States, does it trigger any trauma for you?
Oh, I have, and everyone I know who went through Hurricane Sandy, we have flashbacks, we get knots in our stomach, we get agitated, our heartbeat increases, and we can't stop watching it. So I jokingly call it hurricane porn. It's like when you first watch porn when you're in college and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm watching that, but then you can't stop watching it. You're kind of like glued to the TV, and it's very unsettling. It never feels safe. It never feels calm, and ultimately, I'm at a point where I'm actually going to be moving inland sometime next year because it's too close to the edge of the sea right now to be living right on. I mean, it's beautiful living on the ocean, but the storms are increasing.
Right.
And I wrote the book because even if we all sit down and all the stakeholders agree on what we need to do to eliminate climate change, then we're still going to have millions of people who were traumatized. And a year later, I look back at Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Maria years ago. I mean, people are still fighting their way through it. Many people, and this is one of the chapters in my book that talks about financial trauma. Every natural disaster is a socioeconomic disaster, and millions of people will go bankrupt. Millions of people will never be able to get their homes back. Millions of people will go under financially because of how much these catastrophes cost.
Right.
And we are not in this country mentally prepared or spiritually prepared to deal with long periods of hardship. And when you speak to people who live in the third world or people who live in Europe, where they've been through wars and they've been through famines and they've been through, natural disasters and terrorism in the UK throughout the 1970s, they have an equanimity to them because they have these 5 gifts which came to me when I was meditating a few months after Hurricane Sandy. And these 5 gifts that will help us are humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and growth.
Wow. Well, when we come back, let's talk about those and how we put those in our life and how we look at those in terms of being able to deal with our life.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Path Home Shamanic Art School proudly presents the Gathering of Shaman 2019 Fall Retreat, Manifestation Samhain. Join me, certified shamanic instructor Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magnificent Colorado Mountains this November 2nd and 3rd for a life-changing event. Participate in unique teachings and ceremonies that'll put the power and magic of shamanic manifestation into your hands. Sit in circle with like-minded individuals, sharing group energy and the power it generates. Classes will be held in a facility next to the beautiful, majestic Arkansas River, further empowering the experience. Space is limited, so reserve your spot today. For more information, visit findyourpathhome.com or email touchin@findyourpathhome.com.
Hi, everyone. This is Patty Conklin with Healing Within. Thank you so much for being with me and listening and learning and hopefully being a part of the healing curve of this process. My guest today is Dr. Laurie Nadel, and she's a psychotherapist and many things that I could go on and tell you how wonderful this woman is. If you have been going through a disaster or have had a trauma, look for her book, The 5 Gifts, Discovering Hope, Healing, and Strength When Disaster Strikes. So, Laurie, thanks for coming back. Let's talk about those 5 gifts that you just mentioned. Talk to me about each one and how it helps an individual getting through trauma.
Humility, when I ask people, would you rather have humility or 1 million Twitter followers? People laugh. But most people would rather have 1 million Twitter followers. This is a culture that, admires fame and popularity and, people who seem to be, plugged in. And we don't really value modesty and humility, and people just kind of very often, like when I go to an airport, I'll thank the people who are sweeping up the airport or cleaning the bathroom, because they do their work with such humility, and it's so important, that they're kind of keeping it clean, or the guards who are standing by in Penn Station. I'll thank them, because we need to have that protection now, especially now. And these people, the soldiers, for example, who are, fighting every day so that, we can keep our freedom, they do their work with humility. They don't expect, to receive any celebratory awards, or they don't expect to be famous for it. And with humility, it gives us the grace to be able to say, what I used to say to myself is, Laurie, as horrible as this is, it isn't happening to you personally. It's happening to 1 million people.
Right.
And, it's the ability to say suffering is universal. It's part of the human experience. My suffering or my hurt or my loss at this time it's maybe the worst to me in this moment, but it's part of life. And instead of saying why me, humility lets us say why not me. I'm not special. There's nothing in my life script that says I should never suffer.
Right.
Everybody goes through some pain in life. Humility is the gift that lets us accept it with grace.
Yes.
And I find that, when I'm really suffering, and I'll pray to God, say, God, please give me the humility to accept where I am right now. I'm not who I think I should be in this moment. That gift of humility grounds me, and it makes me feel safe, even when I'm not safe at all.
Right. Right.
The next gift is patience. And patience, it reveals to us that sometimes this hurt goes on much longer than we thought it was going to go on.
Right.
Sometimes the hurt goes on. We can find that the second anniversary, or this past year with 9/11, it was the 18th anniversary, and many people found that they were having nightmares and flashbacks, and they were having a very hard time getting through the ceremony if they were a family member. It kicked up a lot of visceral memories, and patience is the gift that lets us accept that the grief will come and go over time, and it will be unpredictable. And when it hits us, or a flashback hits us, the gift of patience lets us accept that it's not over. It may not ever be 100% over, but patience lets us be human.
Yes.
And be human with ourselves. The third gift is empathy, and empathy is the gift of connecting with each other and connecting with ourselves. It's the feel-good gift, of all the. I used to call them, or I wanted to call the book, The 5 Unbearable Gifts, which Buddhist monks loved the title, because there's a paradox in each of these 5 gifts. We don't really want them, especially not in the United States. It's like,
right.
Patience is a gift. What are you talking about? and publishers said, if they're unbearable, people won't want them. And so empathy is the only gift that's not unbearable, because the more you give, the more you get. And we usually see this huge rush of empathy the first 2 or 3 months after a disaster. But then, the news cycle moves on, and humanitarian workers and first responders move on, and the people who have direct loss, or who have lost somebody, or have been directly involved in witnessing what happened, or they've been working, in that arena there, or working to help someone who was directly affected. Those people are left with the pain, and they're not getting the rush of empathy, because the rescue workers and the first responders and a lot of people have moved on, and they feel abandoned. And very often, after 3 to 6 months, loved ones or family members or friends will say, "What's wrong with you? You should be over it by now. Why are you still upset?"
Why are you still upset? I know that after 9/11, 6 or 7 days after 9/11, I was giving a lecture out in Colorado, and I said that the greatest devastation will truly come if all of this love and empathy that we're showing each other right now because of this horrible disaster, if all of the love and empathy and kindness and so forth that we're giving, if we go back to the way we were, honking horns, being disrespectful, not being nice and kind to each other, that's going to be the greatest disaster. Not the disaster itself, is not holding that place of empathy. And unfortunately, we backtracked. We went right back to, in many cases, the way we were.
And I think that's the point of the gift of empathy in long-term healing, is that we need sustainable empathy.
Yes.
We need to value our friendships, as you and I do, the empathic connections that we have with people, the roots of friendship that go very deep.
Very true.
We need to honor those, and we need to value those, and we need to strengthen those, because that is how we grow, and that is how we heal long term.
Yes.
And I always, when I have run programs in the past, they've gone on for 2 years, 3 years, sometimes even 4 years after Hurricane Sandy, because people do get triggered when there's coastal flooding or when there's coastal storms or when there are hurricanes in another part of the country. And I will say that the community where I live in Long Beach, New York, has become much more empathetic to other communities when there are tornadoes or earthquakes or hurricanes especially. We do go out of our way to help people with cleaning supplies and Christmas decorations and the basic stuff of life that gets wiped out in a storm or
Right.
natural disaster. So I think it's given us the roots of continual ongoing empathy. And I think as a society, as we are becoming increasingly more dissociated and disconnected because people believe that their relationships online are more important than real world relationships, I think that we need empathy more than ever.
Totally agree. What's the next one?
And the next one is forgiveness. And people think that forgiveness is like a light switch that you turn it off, you turn it on. But I like to think of forgiving as a noun, that you can step into what it's like to be in a forgiving state of mind, and you can be forgiving of somebody 5% today and 20% tomorrow and 80%. You may never get to 100%. It can shift, but as long as you are in a forgiving state, the important person that we need to begin forgiving is ourself. We need to begin forgiving ourselves because we weren't able to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Right. So true.
And the final gift is growth. And we are growing all the time. I mean, we don't have to do anything to make our cells grow and replenish, our hair grows, our nail grows. When you cut your finger, your healing intelligence knows how to make healthy new skin cells. And emotionally, we also know how to heal and form scar tissue around some of these trauma wounds. Now, all emotions are stored as molecules in the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, which is where all of our emotions originate and all of our emotions reside, literally in the form of molecules. Mm-hmm. And when we have gotten to the gift of growth, we're able to look back on what happened and say, even though I wish it never happened, and even though I would never wish it on anybody else, I still feel that I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't grown from that experience, if I hadn't learned what I'd learned, if I hadn't formed the connections and relationships and friendships that strengthened me, if I hadn't learned the value of empathy, if I hadn't learned how to be able to connect and feed my soul and help nurture other people, I wouldn't have learned all of that if I hadn't gone through this loss. And that's what we call post-traumatic growth.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I always look at is that there's always good that comes out of bad. And you may not recognize it right away, and it may take the rest of your lifetime before you realize how you grew, because you will grow. And it's your choice as to whether or not you're making it a healthy growth or a not so healthy growth. But, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that growth occurs because of it, and kindness will come along with it, and the empathy when you recognize that being there for other people is so important. So we'll continue this when we come back. I really appreciate you coming on today, Laurie.
Oh, my pleasure.
We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Hi, everyone. It's Patty Conklin and Healing Within. Thank you so much for joining me today and my guest, Dr. Laurie Nadel, psychotherapist and author of The 5 Gifts. Laurie has been through so much, not only personally, but as a professional in helping other people. And, you know, one of the things I did want to touch on, and we've touched on the World Trade Center. Obviously, you had your office in downtown in New York City, and Hurricane Sandy affected you personally in your home. But you're also a member of the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, working on debriefing teams with first responders and teachers at Parkland, Florida. I can't imagine something so challenging.
You know, there are no words, and you know, I have tremendous respect for the courage and also the empathy of the first responders who worked on that tragedy, and also for the teachers who I've gotten to know, who continued to show up the next day and the next day, and as soon as the school opened and coming back, you know, in September, I gave a workshop for 200 teachers, and when the first term, the September term began, which was around the time of the 6-month anniversary of the shooting, and 6 months is when you kind of start to come out of shock, but you're feeling very, very vulnerable. And you have to walk back into the place where, you know, not only do you have visual reminders, but every time there's a fire drill bell that goes off, the kids are jumping out of their skin, you're jumping out of your skin, because the sound is clearly a trigger for all of those trauma molecules to reactivate. Yeah. And it was such a blessing and an honor for me to be able to share with the teachers and with some of the first responders some of the emotional first aid techniques that I've developed over time that work within seconds to they work within seconds to take the edge off, to lower stress levels, to bring people back into their body, to help them and to help kids as well, to kind of de-escalate so that it doesn't become overwhelming or paralyzing. Right. And what we can learn, and the reason why I have a chapter on first responders, is that we can learn from first responders. There's this wonderful movement within the first responder community called Critical Incident Stress Management, which really gives young firemen, police officers, rescue workers permission to acknowledge when something is just too visceral, it's too disturbing, it's too creepy, especially when there are children involved and they have to look at dead children. They weren't able to save a kid, their young parents. How do you process that? How do you come to terms with that so that you can get up the next day and go to work and face another critical situation? And what we can learn from first responders is that it's appropriate to be scared. It's appropriate to be upset. It's appropriate to have difficulty eating or sleeping, or have surges of adrenaline where you feel very jumpy. The important thing is to know how to manage those surges of stress in a healthy way. And that's what we call it, emotional first aid or psychological first aid. And that's really the first part of my book, The Five Gift, is all about what we need to do so that we know if we're going to be in a hurricane, or we're going to be, in a natural disaster, or we've just escaped from a fire. These are the symptoms to look for. This is what we're likely to have. Your heart's likely to be racing, your blood pressure is likely to be elevated, you might have difficulty focusing, you might feel agitated, you might feel like crying, you might have knots in your stomach. All of these are normal reactions to an abnormal situation.
Right.
And what we need to do is learn how to identify them and how to help ourselves in taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. Have you found, I know years ago I read different researches that that psychiatrists, psychotherapists, police officers had a very high suicide rate. Yes. Are we finding that to be overshadowed by first responders that really aren't used to these situations, or are we seeing an increase in deaths among first responders?
Sadly, we are. The New York City Police Department they just started an initiative for suicide prevention and postvention outreach. I'm actually trained in suicide prevention and postvention. I've worked with a number of young women whose husbands were first responders who had threatened or at high risk for suicide. A colleague of mine had said that very often when a first responder retires and he or she, has time on their hands, they're not getting up every day to go in and do the work. That's when the flashbacks start to happen, and that's when very often they will commit suicide later on when the delayed stress reactions start to hit them, the grief reactions start to hit them, and the feelings of helplessness, because they can save thousands and thousands of lives, but it may be that one person who they weren't able to save that's going to stay with them. And so it's so important, the outreach that's going on in the first responder community says so important, and among veterans, to be there, to offer support, to listen, and to also understand if you're a family member, it's just very important to listen and to watch and to be present for that person who's suffering, because very often the pain runs so deep that there are no words.
Right.
And you just have to be present in a compassionate way.
Right. But so many people, they're not trained. They're
right.
not trained to hold space and to be present and be there and so forth. And I think that's one of the challenges we have in this country and other countries is how do we get the average everyday person to, let's go back to empathy, to really understand empathy and what it's like. As a traveler of 66 countries now, way too many, it gave me a totally different sense of understanding when I was able to see in extreme poverty. I grew up in poverty, but nothing compared to what I saw.
Right.
And it gave me a very empathetic heart, I believe, in being able to be there or work at different women's shelters or soup kitchens or, what have you, around the world. But the average person doesn't have that. I think we are still less than 15%, 17% of individuals who actually have passports that go someplace other than Mexico or Canada for a cruise, that really understand the world. How do we help people, the average person who's listening today, who may not have suffered a tragedy or severe loss or poverty? How do we help them understand for their friends that have gone through? How do we increase their empathy? And maybe I'm just barking up the wrong tree. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a human need. Again, we need to really learn from other cultures and other spiritual traditions, and from people who don't have the luxurious lifestyle that we have. Mm-hmm. We really need to reframe that owning things or buying things, is not. It's really not going to help us when the chips are down.
Right.
Right. It's we need core human connection, and I just wanted to touch base on something that you mentioned years ago when I was a young reporter, I was a photojournalist, and I was covering a gold rush in the jungle in South America, and there was a mudslide, and while everybody was out there shoveling mud, I went for a walk in the woods, and I came upon this man who was living under a lean-to, and he had like no teeth and like a long beard, and I guess I maybe I should have been scared of him, but he looked pretty peaceful, and he was heating water in a chipped tin cup, and then he poured in like a tablespoon of powdered condensed milk. And he stirred it, and he stirred it and stirred it, and he gave me the cup, and he told me to sit down. And I said, no, I don't want to eat your breakfast. But he insisted, and as I was drinking his breakfast, this man had the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
It was like it lit up the whole jungle. And his generosity and his gentleness in giving me his breakfast made him the happiest man. And I thought, this is the richest man in the world.
Yes.
I've never forgotten that. His soul was so happy by sharing all he had with someone who was a total stranger, just like wandering, this gringo woman wandering through the jungle. And I never forgot that, because after Hurricane Sandy, when we had no water, I found I had some water, a bottle of water I gave to my neighbor, and she came back and brought me a cup of tea, and I burst into tears. And I felt that it's in those moments of pure sharing and pure empathy and pure giving that that we shine, and
yes.
we help other people to shine. And I hate to say that hardship is like the fairy godmother of empathy, but in a way she is.
Yes.
Because with hardship, we really come to appreciate those shining, sparkling moments of genuine kindness.
Yeah.
And
that silver lining.
So much more than that. We just need so much more of that in the world right now. And we can begin, very simply by thanking somebody as we, go through our day. Thank the cashier at the supermarket, make eye contact. Tell that person, I hope you have an easy shift. Make a human connection.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, The 70-Year Cover-Up Exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hides' life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
Hi, everyone. It's Patty Conklin and Healing Within. Thank you so much for listening in today, and I hope you're getting some valuable information. And kind of want to go over with you now my guest, Dr. Laurie Nadel. Is the author of the 5 Gifts, Discovering Hope, Healing, and Strength When Disaster Strikes. She's also 4-time best-selling author of The Sixth Sense, Unlocking Your Ultimate Mind Power, which was featured twice on Oprah. And so, Laurie, we've known each other, golly, a good 20, 22 years now.
In this lifetime.
In this lifetime. And we think very much alike. And I know for you and I, empathy is an important part of our life, and not only for each other, but certainly for everyone we work with. But when we're experiencing a natural disaster, or when we've gone through something horrific that's man-made, what are some of the cues that we can start helping people as they listen to this? What are things that they can be doing? Because as we both know, disease is going to be coming from those emotional situations, and and people need to be able to forgive, be able to be empathetic, be able to let it go. What kind of things can we look at in terms of doing? And I'm gonna start out because I think it's an important piece. We were talking about people hold on to such materialistic things, kind of moving out of that space. But one of the things I've found that helps people become empathetic is to volunteer.
Yeah. Volunteering is great, or even, asking somebody, if a friend is having a tough time, what do you need? Just asking the question, what do you need? Sometimes just, offering to come and sit with somebody if they're having a tough time. That's very important. I think, with kids, sometimes when your kids get scared, one of my emotional first aid tools is to breathe in a soothing color and to feel that color finding its way anywhere within that would like to feel relaxed and calm. And then as you exhale, release any tension or release anything you don't want to feel by breathing out a different color.
Yeah.
So you can inhale a wonderful soothing color and feel that it's hitching a ride on the oxygen molecules, and it's going to get all the way into your fingertips and your toes. And then as you breathe out, exhale anything you want to get rid of by breathing out a different color.
Yeah. Sounds like my color works to me.
Yeah. Very, 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 very similar. But it can be different each time. Each time. Your unconscious mind will give you a different color each time. And, one day it might be red and another day it might be brown.
Yeah.
Some people breathe in brown because they feel it's very grounding and or it feels like honey, like when you put honey in tea.
It's also understanding that don't put an emotion to the color.
Right.
Just do what your body needs in that moment.
Exactly.
What about for PTSD? When people are having flashbacks, how do we help them move through their flashbacks? What's your advice on that?
The quickest technique that I know is to throw all of your energy down to the soles of your feet and just feel that gravity is pulling all of those uncomfortable feelings, because flashbacks are literally in your body. It's the nervous system giving you a cascade of very unpleasant molecules. Your body feels like it's hot wired, like you want to jump out of your skin. So just get all of those unpleasant sensations and feelings down to the soles of your feet and rub your feet on the ground so that the only thing that you're aware of is the contact that your feet are making on the ground and the sound that your feet are making as they rub on the ground, and almost like you're looking at the world through the soles of your feet. And when you do that, it will disconnect the flashback app. Your mind can't do a flashback. Your feet can only do feet things. So your feet cannot do anxiety. Your feet cannot do flashbacks. And your feet will help you to disconnect the immediacy of the flashback. Another thing that you can do is to, and this does help, is that this is a flashback. I know it's a flashback. It doesn't change what's happening, because one of my colleagues described a flashback. It's kind of like your brain is trying to eliminate or vomit out the unpleasant sensations, the unpleasant feelings.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to roll with it until you can take the edge off, and you can get it, you can minimize it, minimize the impact by rubbing your feet on the floor.
Yeah.
There are those two things are probably the fastest, I call them EFA or emotional first aid tools in your arsenal. And you can use them with kids too. If your kid starts freaking out, say, okay, put all your attention down at your feet. Imagine that everything that you're thinking or feeling is like a cursor on your cell phone. You're going to swipe it down to the soles of your feet, rub your feet on the ground, and just let your feet do the rubbing and listen to the sound that your feet make. And that will disconnect anything that's going on in the head or higher up in the body. And those two tools, I think, should be in everybody's arsenal. The other thing to be aware of is PTSD is now a national epidemic, according to the National Institutes of Health. 44 million of us are reported to be suffering from PTSD, but it is possible to get it from watching images. disturbing images. Vicarious traumatization is a real diagnosis, and it used to be confined to people who worked in like police department communications or newsrooms. I worked for 20 years in hard newsrooms where you're looking at death and destruction for 10 hours a day. That can cause the same physical reactions as direct exposure to even a near miss on the road or seeing somebody, having an accident or getting injured. So it's important to monitor how much time you're actually spending looking at screens and take a news break. If there's a particularly disturbing story on the news and you're getting upset, turn it off. Take a news break for 24, 48 hours because exposure to those images will cause the same physical symptoms as a direct exposure to a traumatic event.
Yeah. One of the things we haven't covered, and I want to make sure we cover it in this show, is caretakers of individuals with PTSD or a caretaker of someone who's been through a traumatic event. It's so hard on the caretaker, and I think that we don't acknowledge it enough sometimes of what trauma they go through when they see their loved ones going through trauma. I know you and I spoke, I think, maybe a month or so after Hurricane Sandy. And I was still concerned and I won't say worried, but concerned because I knew you were okay physically, but concerned about how you were doing mentally. If you're living with someone who has been through a traumatic event, let's say you're the spouse of an officer, of a first responder, what are some tools that they can use to center themselves, not just in assisting their loved ones, but what tools can they use?
Well, you're raising an interesting point that's becoming much more, people are much more aware. It's called compassion fatigue or caregiver burnout. And it affects humanitarian workers, nurses. There's now a federal grant, New York City hospitals, where we're actually introducing something called Soul Collage into the hospital system to help medical staff and personnel deal with compassion fatigue issues. I think it's really important to be aware that secondary trauma is real. And that the new book I'm working on is called Let Your Soul Catch Up, 5 minutes a day to resilience and calm. And I just recommend hit the pause button for 5 minutes a day and do something that feeds your soul. Listen to music, put your feet up, drink a cup of tea or something that you like, look out the window, lie down, listen to, something that takes you away to Hawaii. Think about something that you like to do. Sit in your garden, play with your pet. It doesn't have to be something like earth-shaking or mindful. You can pray. Pray one of your favorite psalms, but set a time every day, maybe 5 minutes to 12, or right after you prepare lunch, and sit down for 5 minutes a day and let your soul catch up. That is the best antidote that I know of for caregiver burnout and compassion fatigue.
I know that I have an app on my phone that will vibrate, and it tells me to breathe for 5 minutes, to just stop and breathe. And, it's one of the things that I looked at in traveling abroad in some of the Middle Eastern countries of having the chimes go off, in the square and so forth. And I loved it. I loved it because it always made me stop and give pause and be grateful for my life. And I think people, especially in today's world in the United States, need to be able to take time and take those breaks throughout the day to breathe, to be calm, to be aware of the fact that so much of the time we're running at a frenetic pace, and we really have to calm down, be quiet, and soothe our soul, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And just 5 minutes a day. If you start, the research shows that we need 20 minutes a day of mind-body relaxation to help with our resting heart rate, lower unhealthy stress levels, prevent flare-ups of hypertension and diabetes, and help the immune system. But
Right.
I don't know anybody that's got 20 minutes a day, especially if you're an active person or you're a parent or you're a caregiver. So start with 5 minutes a day, and the research shows that if you can work up to 4 5-minute windows a day, you will get the same physical benefits and health benefits and mental health benefits as if you sit and meditate for 20 minutes a day.
Beautiful.
So start with 5 minutes a day.